Hello my beautiful drone flying friends. So today we're going to talk about how to buy a second-hand drone. Everything that you need to know to make sure you don't buy a dud. If you're new to this channel, please remember to subscribe and hit that bell notification because I'm going to talk about everything drones, maintenance, flying, photography, the lot. So I want to share everything I've learned with you, so please remember to subscribe. Okay, how do you buy a second-hand drone? Here are the things. Now, when I first bought a drone, I bought a second-hand drone. Now, I knew absolutely nothing about drones. I'm going to sneeze. I was so very fortunate that the person that I was buying off was knowledgeable about drones, was super helpful, and wasn't trying to rip me off. But that isn't always the case. So here are the top 10 things that I think you should check before, during, and also after, and by after I mean in a test flight, all of the things you should look at. Now, this video is based on a massive article. I've got a free 50-point checklist on the website. If you go to droneflyingpro.com and go into the search bar and type secondhand drones, you will find a 50-part checklist with a printout that you can take with you when you're checking a drone, just to check it off and make sure everything is a-okay. All right then, let's get into the first thing. What should you do before you actually go to see a drone? So when you are looking for a secondhand drone, you are looking online, you're looking at like Gumtree in Australia, Craigslist, maybe Facebook Marketplace, there's a ton of places. And so before you actually decide that you're going to invest the time to go and see a drone, here are the things that I think you should just make sure either the article tells you or you need to ask for just a few more questions. Now, people hate the back and forth when you're actually buying secondhand stuff. So what I recommend you do is just do this all in one go if they haven't already addressed it in the advert, and read the ad properly first to make sure that you're not annoying them with information they've already provided. All right, the first thing is flight time. So a lot of drones have the ability to tell you how much flight time, how much flying they've done. This will give you an idea of how worn out the propellers are, how well used the motor is, and also the sort of condition that you should expect the drone to be in. So I bought a drone with only 4 hours flight time, and that's next to nothing. But obviously if you're buying a drone that's been used by a photographer, or they're upgrading, it could have a lot more. Now, to give you an idea, there's no set time that you should get a drone refurbished or anything, but the propellers should be changed after about 200 hours of flight time. And also probably at that time you may want to factor in, if it's a DJI drone, like a refresh. Send it in to an authorized repairer and just get everything checked over. But essentially anything under about, 50 to 100, you really don't have to worry. To be honest with you, a lot of these drones are online because people aren't using them. So the flight time tends to be a little lower. If the person can't find the flight time, then look at the number of battery cycles and ask for that. On these online marketplaces, people aren't very good at taking photos. That's just the reality of it. So what you need to do is make sure that you can see the underside, the top, the arms, the propellers, the controller, and everything else in a close-up view. So if they don't provide that, if they just provide an overall shot of everything laid out on a bed or a table, you can just say, hey, can I have a close-up of, and you should focus on the body and the arms of the drone. That's where the majority of the wear and tear will happen as it's being landed, taken off. If it's had any massive crashes, it will be obvious on the arms because they're the sort of thing sticking out the side. But yeah, that's what you should really focus on, is ask for all of the pictures that you can that are close-ups, and that's important. Ask for a close-up of the body, a full frame of the drone that gets the top and the bottom, and then just zoom in and have a look. And that should give you an idea if they're telling you the truth about how many flight hours, or if it's got low flight time, then maybe they've just been really clumsy with it and it's a drone you should steer away from. But yeah, just look for that. The drone that I bought, the Mavic Air, was pristine condition. It had been flown a handful of times and it looked really, really great. So there were no superficial marks, nothing. Everything was a-okay. Okay, and another thing that I would ask is how the drone had been used. So if that's not clear in the advert, you can ask that outright. The reason I do that is because, like I said, a lot of these drones are just hobby photographers that thought they wanted a drone and now are like, well, it's just sat in my office, it's sat in a drawer, I don't really need it, I'll put it up online. And that's a great thing, you know, this one careful owner thing is fantastic. But you may come across a drone that is an upgrade for a professional photographer, and if they've been using it as their job or if they've been using it in a professional capacity, you'd expect a drone with much higher usage, much more likely to have superficial damage on the arms and the body. And so yes, you have to ask how the drone had been used so that then you can decide, okay, do I want to go for a commercial drone that has got a little bit more damage, potentially has been used much more often. Potentially I would need to replace the batteries too. So yeah, that just gives you an idea of how it's been used and if it's something that you're actually interested in. So I always like to go for a drone that has not been used much and has had one owner. You may get a good bargain, you know? You may get a good bargain on a drone that's more heavily used, and that is your choice. Okay, now we're going to talk about during the inspection. So if you decide that, yes, this is a drone that I want to go and inspect, the first thing to do is remember that you are not obligated still to buy the drone, okay? You got to go in there ready to walk away. And that's because the online persona and perspective of the drone may be much better than it in person. And so, yes, these are the things. So first of all, I like to look at the battery. Now, you know, make sure that all the lights work, make sure that it doesn't look too scuffed up, ask how many charging cycles each battery has been through. And also, and this is the most important thing, look for corrosion on the metal parts of the battery. So you need to check, you know, in here, okay, is it corroded? Is there anything? Are they all lined up? When you look straight down into it, the battery connectors should be nicely lined up without any issues. And if they're a little bit corroded or twisted, then that just means that battery will have to be replaced. But overall, yeah, the battery is the first thing you should check, because then you're going to take your drone and you're going to put it in and you're going to wait for that little click. Now, there's tabs on the side that tell you whether or not it's been properly kind of connected, but what you're looking for is a battery that connects well. And I should have said as well is look at the connectors inside the drone for any sort of bending or warping or corrosion. You know, this is all nice and clean, and there's no sort of discoloration, and there's a satisfying click when it hits the sort of tabs and everything fits into place. So yes, that's important because in the Mavic Air in particular, the battery's mounted on the bottom, which means you don't want it falling out, right? But yes, once you've looked at the battery, connect it to the drone, make sure it's nice and sturdy, that it doesn't move, and then check the drone. All right, the drone is the thing you are buying, obviously. So let's just make sure that we're buying a good drone. And the way you do that is look at the different kind of parts. The first thing I like to do is have a look to see how the movement is for each part. So is it smooth? Is there any crunchiness? It should just move freely without too much hassle. Same with the arms. And I just like to check each part of it to be like, okay, does it all move nicely? Does it all sort of not lock into position, because these don't necessarily lock, but do they sit in position well without any movement? And that's the first thing I check, because when you crash a drone or when you misuse it, the arms are the first thing to really get damaged because they're sat out from the body. And then after I've done that, just check the motors. Do they move freely? Yes, they move freely. Do the propellers look like they're in good condition? So you should replace these every about 200 flight hours. but I like to use my nail. I just run very lightly across the top, and that will tell you whether or not there's any chips or bumps in there that will need the propellers to be replaced. So your fingertips are probably the most sensitive thing to check the propellers with, which is fantastic. And then just the condition of the body in general. So on top, we're looking for no sun damage, but underneath and on the feet, is there any significant sort of damage or scratching or anything like that? But as long as there's only superficial marks, you'll probably be okay. Inside the camera gimbal, I also like to check to make sure there's no dust and debris and that there's no scratches on the lens. But yeah, it's not until now when you fly it that you'll actually be like, okay, this is a good drone. But as long as you've done all these checks up until now, you'll be fine. Which brings me on to the next part, the controller. Okay, during the check, just ask for the controller. And once again, look for any obvious breaks. Move the antenna. Do they swivel around nicely? Do the things open up? Does your phone fit in there? Any of the cables, do they work? Do they look like they fit in well? And also screwing in the joystick knobs, do they fit and do they fit in and screw in smoothly? So those are the things you're looking for the controller, because when the drone is in the air, this is the only thing you have to communicate with it. So this is just as important as the actual drone. And yeah, just without the drone on, move the joysticks around. Is it free? Is there even resistance around it? Is it actually sort of nice to hold? Are there any superficial scratches that you should worry about? And then also, because you'll be using it with your phone, does your phone fit well into the controller? And have you got the appropriate connectors to connect the controller to your phone? Okay, it's a fly. Okay, the next thing is the test flight. Now, I hadn't ever flown a drone before, so there was no point me actually flying this thing. So if you haven't flown a drone before, you can just ask for a demonstration. That's what I did. But these are the things, if you're not flying it, these are the things you're looking for. When it first takes off and it's in a hover, is there a steady sound? Okay, there's no ramping, there's no weirdness, there's no wobble, or there's no kind of just weird noises. Does it just sound like a drone? Like, does it just sound constant? And it'll change as it adjusts to the wind conditions, but ultimately you're not looking for any sort of weird overtones or stop and starts or rampings or anything that happens sort of periodically. That's a good sign that the drone is holding its position and that it's not sort of like struggling in any one of its motors. Once it's in hover, the next thing you should check is there a good smooth motion when you do thrust? So when you climb, when you push the drone up into the air, does it move in a slow and smooth, not slow, but a smooth motion? Slow if you only push it up a little bit, but we're looking for just a single sweep up and not sort of like it jumping or being weird or making too much more noise, but it will make much more noise because it's gaining altitude. Okay, the next thing, sensors and GPS. So as to look at the controller, a lot of these sort of commercial mid to high range drones have sensors, collision sensors for obstacle avoidance. Do they work? Bring it towards you. Does it stop? Does it tell you how far from the ground it is? All of those things, make sure the sensors are working and that it's giving you the feedback on the controller. And the final thing is, are there any weird warnings that are popping up on the screen as you're flying the drone or as the demonstration is happening? Just keep an eye on there. You get high wind warnings, you get all of the aircraft interference warnings, but nothing that tells you it should land immediately or there's a critical issue. Those are the things in a test flight that I think are really important. Those are the top level things that I think you should check, but I've got a 50-part checklist and a massive article on droneflyingpro.com. Go download that for free, the checklist, so you can take it with you when you go to buy your second-hand drone. And remember to subscribe to this channel, and I shall see you in the next video. Happy flying!